A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Business Live with me, Emmanuel Abuaji Yafe. Coming up in today's edition, lead partner of the Sankofa Gyinyame Oil and Gas Field, ENI Ghana, confirms arrival of third FPSO in the country in March 2017 to commence commercial production on the country's third hydrocarbon development. The National Communications Authority, NCA, has given government agencies 1 year to phase out all manual processing of licenses and identification documents. And the Council for Technical and Vocational Education Training, CUTVET, says adequate funding now exists to build capacity of prospective entrepreneurs in technology and vocational skills. Hello again. You can always get interactive with us by tweeting at Joy Business GH, and on Facebook we are on Joy Business. We're taking a short break here. We'll be back.
Business Live today is brought to you by GCB Bank.
Thank you very much for staying. Welcome back. Projected revenue from the Jubilee field may not be affected that badly after all. That's the conclusion drawn after going through the latest trading update of Tullow Oil. The following Business Desk report has more.
According to Tullow, despite the cut in production, it still expects the daily crude production to hang around 74,000 barrels of crude oil till the end of this year. The development could mean that the projected revenue the country was expecting might not be affected despite current works being carried out on the Jubilee turrets bearing. The company adds that it is expecting to receive the lost revenue from its insurers, which will minimize any expected loss. On 10, the oil exploration firm says daily production should reduce to about 15,000 barrels a day on the average, down from the 50,000 it recorded when it started production from August 18 this year. As at October 6 this year, Tullow has exported some 650,000 barrels of crude from the 10 area. Speaking after the release of the statement, Chief Executive of Tullow, Aidan Heavy, says they expect an improved cash flow from 10 by last quarter.
Now, still on the oil and gas sector, the lead partner of the Sankofa Gyinyame Oil and Gas Field, ENI, says it is close to starting commercial production on the country's third biggest oil field. Managing Director of ENI Ghana, Fabio Cavana, says all the necessary equipment will soon arrive in the country to aid this vision.
We are in advanced phase of the project. The FPSO is coming in Ghana in March 2017, and then it has to be installed, and all the facilities installed, so the first oil is confirmed in August. And we're working hard also for the gas portion, and the gas, the first gas is planned in the first half of 2018. And we are going to deliver at least 171 million of standard cubic feet per day from 2018 to 2036. From ENI, we built with our partners a project which has a commercial viability. It's a technically viable project which will provide a lot of benefit to the country because the gas we will be able to deliver is able to supply almost 1 gigawatt of power. So having the gas today, you would solve the doom-solve problems.
Away from that, the National Communications Authority, NCA, has given government agencies 1 year to phase out manual processing of all national licenses and identification documents. This means all applicants for either radio or television broadcasting licenses will have to be done through the NCA online portal. In this regard, the NCA has been engaging stakeholders in the telecommunication industry to explain its new directive. Ebenezer Sabuti reports.
There is no doubt the communications industry remains one of the vibrant sectors of the economy, currently recording brisk business activity. According to the National Communications Authority, the move to adopt paperless application system is to reduce the hassle officials go through in processing large forms of applications for licenses and permits. Deputy Director of the NCA in charge of technical and engineering, Henry Kando, spoke to Joy Business after a forum which seeks to introduce stakeholders to the web customer portal of the authority. He said this will also encourage clients to have easy access to state agencies and eventually improve service delivery.
This time it is very difficult to process applications where we're having thousands of applications coming and they are all in the paper format. So one of the things is to encourage speed to application processes, discourage paper systems, then encourage our stakeholders to have the ease of checking the status of the application any time that they fill.
What sort of applications are we talking about here?
All the services that we render: aeronautics, maritime, land mobile, dealership, sound and TV, audio broadcasting, all the services we render.
Do we have all the structures in place to ensure that this works smoothly?
We have the structures. What you need for online this thing: a very good internet bandwidth, a very good speed, and, which we have, and the management system that we have. So all is in place for us to roll it out, and that's why we're doing it.
According to the NCA's roadmap, customers will no longer have to travel from their various locations to the capital city to do business. Henry Kano explains how people could access the online platform from any location with their mobile phones.
If you are in the remote area, thank God we have very good mobile system, 3G, 4G coming up. On your phone, you can just do it. Or you move to our closest office, any of the regional offices. And then, as we said, we'll put the systems there for you to apply and people to help you apply for your application. And that will be about how many percent of our stakeholders. That will be a very minute percentage of the stakeholders.
The forum is expected to be organized in all 10 regions to engage the citizenry on the new policy measures taken by the authority.
Now, adequate funding exists to build the capacity of prospective entrepreneurs in technology and vocational skills. That's according to the Executive Director of the Council for Technical and Vocational Education Training, COTVET. He was speaking to Joy Business at the launch of the Skills Development Fund Skills and Technology Fair in Accra on Wednesday. Amelie Josu has more.
Access to funding to start and expand small and medium-scale enterprises have continued to be the bane of Ghana's private sector development. This is because of some unfavorable economic and financing conditions inhibiting small businesses startups to access loans from banks. This financing gap is what the Skills Development Fund of COTVET seeks to bridge. As the SDF Skills and Technology Fair organized by COTVET, Executive Director Sebastian Day gave an assurance that adequate funds currently exist under the fund to help small-medium enterprises.
I think about 5 years ago, the Skills Development Fund was instituted as part of the larger Ghana Skills and Technology Development Project, which COTVET has been implemented in the last 5 years. So the Skills Development Fund, received a lot of financial support from DANIDA, the World Bank, and our government to reach out to Ghanaian entities that largely have some deficiency in skills and technology. The Skills Development Fund, as it is instituted now, is a challenge fund. Okay, what that means is that be you an individual or a company or an institution, public or private, you can apply, so long as your application satisfies certain conditions. And those conditions are simply for you to prove that you would bring about productivity increase, you will bring about job creation, you will bring about income increase to the end users. So long as your application to the SDF satisfies these conditions, you stand a chance of getting a grant. We are going to the phase 2. And I think $14 million has been dedicated to also see us through the phase 2. So I'm encouraging all companies to approach COTVET if they have the technology, and passing it on. Training people is their challenge. COTVET will sponsor or support the training of other people or other entities.
The 3-day fair seeks to showcase the success stories of COTVET and the Ministry of Education in coordinating development in Ghana.
You're welcome back. Now, today in Business Agenda, we walk the corridors of the banking sector, where a banking consultant, Nana Otue Champong, is making fresh case for the Bank of Ghana not to place a cap on the planned recapitalization plan among our banks. Now, he wants the central bank to rather introduce a system where banks are classified according to their respective investments and associated risks. This is coming as the central bank advances moves to announce an increase in the minimum capital of banks to at least 300 million Ghana cedis towards strengthening the banking sector. Nana Otue Champong believes, however, the banks would operate more efficiently if the levels of capitalization are based on their exposed risks.
There are two types of capital. There is the regulatory capital and economic capital. Now, the regulatory capital is what the regulator sets, having regard to the risk that the institution faces. So when we move from 7 million to 60 million, then from 60 million to 120 million, at that time, that's how the regulator worked out the risk complexion. Now, moving on from there, we realize that the risk is getting higher. And once it's getting higher, then those capital bases should be raised. So it is in line that the regulator is suggesting an increase in the capital requirement. However, the argument should also be kicked in that instead of just setting one figure, sort of call it one size fits all, that all banks should have, say, 300 million as minimum capital. Some will make use of that, others may not make use of that, because the capital determines your economic activity. So if a bank has got 1 or 2 branches versus one which has got 100 or so branches, you wouldn't expect the economic activity of the two to be the same. So if you set a figure like 300 million and say one size fits all, whether you've got 2 branches or 100 branches, you should have that capital. Then the one which has got only 2 branches will have excess capital, and the only option will be to put it in treasury bills. And that's what presently we are seeing. 1 or 2 small banks, all they are doing is they are not lending to the private sector. Their lending is to government through treasury bills. And so one of them becomes the most profitable bank in Ghana because they don't have any non-performing loan. All their loans are through government, through treasury bills, and so it goes on. So I think now we should kick in the argument that the regulator should also look at ways and means of introducing economic capital rather than all be set at regulatory capital.
So what reaction to this call? Well, financial analyst Charles Mensah has some reservations about this call, saying classifying the banks based on their capital is not the way to go. According to him, attempts in the past to have this done failed to yield the desired results. He's rather encouraging the central bank to induce measures among these banks.
In the past, yes, we had specific banks for specific sectors. And we had the likes of NIB focusing on investment activity, Bank for Housing focusing on construction, Cooperative Bank focusing on small persons, the rural banks and so on and so forth. We brought the universal banking license activity. That means that it was difficult to differentiate whether the bank is focused on this activity or that. and therefore the concept of the universal banking started. Unfortunately for us, the capital requirement for some of the banks is too low, and therefore if it is that they are financing projects, the Bank of Ghana itself limits them, because you cannot lend more than 15% of your equity to one particular client. So invariably it limits them to do projects, and therefore each time there's a big ticketing project, especially in the oil and gas industry, in cocoa industry, you notice that it's either a syndication or the likes of International Bank grabbing it and doing it big. So it is against that background that some suggestions were made for the various local banks to up the game by increasing the size of their equity. And therefore I think is the call in the right direction. What it is that, and that's what some of the banks are failing to do, this is time that most of the banks should be talking to each other to merge forward.
If we step up monitoring and supervision, would it still not help?
No, these days, you know, banks rather lead, they are leading the regulators, and it's all over the world. It's not even in Ghana.
Charles Mensah is a financial analyst. Do make a date with us next week for another edition of the Business Agenda. It is powered by Joy Business.
It's now time for the interview of the day. Director of HFC Bank, Robert Lehand, has re-emphasized the importance of Ghana's local content law in promoting sustainable national development. To this end, he said HFC Bank is ready to finance projects in the oil and gas upstream sector. He was speaking with Kuku Aban at the sidelines of the Local Content Summit going on in Takoradi.
We are actually the only platinum sponsor, and yes, this is not the first seminar that we have been partnering with the Local Content Commission. We believe that the oil industry has a tremendous role to play in the economic development of Ghana, and we also believe that, you know, local content laws are only really good as what is written on paper without proper financing structures in place. And therefore, we are trying to do our part as a bank. We understand that there are a number of issues surrounding individuals getting financing, and we have stepped up to the plate as a bank to play our role in really bringing local content laws to life.
And support for SMEs financially is crucial to ensure that, you know, the local content agenda is achieved. What are you putting on the table? What are you offering?
Well, you know, first, I mean, Republic HFC, as you're aware, is now a subsidiary of Republic Bank Financial Limited out of Trinidad. And Republic Bank has had a long history, or Trinidad and Tobago has had a long history in the financing or in the oil sector. And therefore, Republic Bank has developed a tremendous amount of expertise in the financing of the oil and gas industry in that company. So what we are doing at HFC is, now that HFC is a subsidiary of Republic Bank, we are leveraging on those expertise and bringing the products that were used successfully in financing local content in Trinidad here into Ghana.
Are there specific areas that those in the SME sector who have interests in the upstream oil and gas sector can get from you? Perhaps specific areas you're looking at in the area of financing?
Well, you know, I mean, when you talk about financing local content, I mean, it's interesting to understand where you are actually in the sector. Yes, you are up in the upstream sector, but We are not talking even Republic Bank with its size in Trinidad and the banking sector here. No one here could finance exploration. It is too risky, the financing that is required.
This is where we part company on the program Business Life for today. Many thanks for watching. Do join me again at 7:30 on Joy News Prime when we bring to you business, of course, all the way. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We make a date again tomorrow for another interesting edition of the program. Good evening.